Hi there. In this demonstration, I'd like to show you how we can take a program, which I will give you the link to, but I want to show you how we can create this nested loop scenario so that it just works so nicely with a program. Okay, so in this particular case, it's a very similar situation that we've looked at in the past, where all I'm doing is I'm asking the end user to guess a number between 1 and 10 inclusively. I'm giving them some instructions here that they're going to lose 10 points. Sorry, they're going to gain 10 points if they win, and they lose 1 point if they lose, if they do not pick the correct number. Of course, up here, I do have some import statements like time and random because I will be using the time dot sleep just to do a pause with my initial instructions before we get into the actual activity. And I do have the random module imported here so that I can generate a random number between 1 and 10, and that, of course, inclusively. Okay, so with this while loop, so what's happening is because I have the variable play equals true, we are going to run through the loop at least once. We have to go in the loop. It is true, so that condition allows us in. Then we are going to ask them to give us a number between 1 and 10 inclusively. And then, of course, we are now going to compare. Please note that since my number was randomly generated as an integer, it is important that you have the int in front here so that we are going to convert the number they pick, which will be a string. It will need to be converted to an integer. Then I will compare. I will compare the number that they have picked with my number. And if they are true, if they are the same, then we automatically add 10 points to whatever the score is currently. We give them the feedback that the number was correct and that they scored 10 points. Else would be the alternative, which would be a value that is not correct. And then they would be told that they lost 1 point. And of course, and let me do an update. We need to reduce that by 1 point. Then what I have is the option, regardless if they win or lose, they're going to have the option to play again. So they can choose to type yes, like Y, sorry, for yes, or N for no. If they play again, if they choose Y, then we are going to randomly generate a new number between 1 and 10 inclusively. If they choose N for no, we are going to say, okay, thank you for playing. You are leaving with so many points. And then, of course, play is now false. So please recall this means that if we go back to the loop, which is exactly what would happen, it's saying, well, while play, you are only allowed in the loop if this is equal to true. But we have now changed it. We have reassigned it to false. So therefore, this loop will no longer come into play. Else would be a response other than Y or N. So I would consider that to be an invalid response. So yet again, we are just going to stop it. You cannot go in the loop. It was invalid. So I don't know if you want to play or not play. So therefore, we're just going to stop. So let me just show you really quickly in the console what this looks like, and then we can go from there as to how we're going to do this inside loop. Okay, so it's nested loops. I tried a number, it said it was wrong. So there you go. We have -1. So if I want to play again, I can type in yes. I can even do it lowercase because I took care of that with the method with a dot upper. I could say yes. I could pick another number. It says it was wrong again. And now it tells me, look at this, my point is now at -2, which makes sense because it started with 0 and I had 2 incorrect guesses. So I should be at -2. If I type no at this point or N, thank you for playing. Same thing if I were to do it again real quickly. If I picked a number and if I said, I just even hit enter, no response at all, it would say invalid response and it would be done. Okay, so what would be really nice is that if they did do this invalid response, rather than being in this ambiguous stage, like, well, do we continue to play or not play? Wouldn't it be nice to give them an opportunity to re-input their Y or N? Maybe they didn't read it correctly. So we would like to give them that other opportunity. So that sounds like a loop. So we want to loop back into this structure so that they can play again. So to do that, we can create a new loop inside, which is a nested loop. So to do that, I am going to take advantage of the really awesome while true loop, which just means I don't need to create a variable. I'm going to say that no matter what, once this is done here, where we're comparing our value, whether you lost or you won, you're going to get into this loop initially because it's now going to ask you, do you want to play yes or no? What I do need to do, however, is in order for this to be in the while loop, I do need to remember my indentation. So by clicking tab This is now indented. This is now the body of my other loop of the while true loop. Now, I have to make sure, though, of course, with a while true loop, that I do break it somehow, unless I want to have this infinite loop. Well, this is where we're going to break it. This is where we want to get out of this loop. So, for example, if they choose to say, yes, play again, that means we need out of this loop. Because if we break out of this loop here, we're back in the main loop, which is this one, the bigger loop, and then we'll be able to pick a number again. If they pick no, then we have play is equal to false. So we still need to break the loop. So we need to break the loop so that we're outside this mini loop. And then because of the play being false is here above the break, which is imperative because anything after a break statement is going to be ignored. So this play equals false has to be above the reassignment so that when I break out of this inner loop, when I go back to the main loop, that we have false. So this is also not going to happen. So it's still going to take us out of the whole thing. Last but not least, in this scenario, now I don't want it this ambiguous state where do we play or do we not play? I want to give them the opportunity to continue back into this loop and try again. Please tell me if you want to play or not play. So I'll say invalid response, and then we can continue. So by continuing, it continues back into this inner loop, not outside this loop right here. So it's going to go in back into the loop that we're currently in. So let's test this. So I want to make sure everything's working properly. So I'll just pick a number and then we'll say yes to play again. Sure enough, it gives me the opportunity again to pick another number. This time we'll say no. And then, okay, thank you for playing. Now, last but not least, I want to test that situation where if I had an invalid response. So here, if I have an invalid response, could be anything typed other than Y or N, even if I hit enter. This is an invalid response. Take a look how it's saying, would you like to play again? Yes or no. So obviously I have to fix with my spacing. So maybe some new lines here. That would be great. But you get the idea. So if I stop this and run it one more time where we have an invalid response. So would you like to play again? It's going to hit enter. Would you like to play again? Yes or no. And it's going to keep looping that until I get that yes or no response that I'm looking for. All right. So hopefully that can work for you. And you can think about using this continue and break process. You could even think about how you can revisit this situation where what if they didn't give you an actual number? How can we loop back to the very beginning of this loop? And since it's right here, it's not much. You don't have to break any like inner loops. You just have to go back to the beginning of the main loop. So try with that and please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to have any help with this process.